Welcome to the Explorer's Guide to Western Australia, Episode 6. So far, we've looked at the Perth area, moved south to the wine region of Margaret River. From there, we headed to the south coast and Albany and the Esperance regions. In our last episode, we turned inland and went north to the goldfields. Now, we'll follow the Great Eastern Highway back to Perth. But while we do, we'll meander around, looking at some of the more interesting attractions we can find along the way. We leave Southern Cross and the goldfields behind, and just after passing the Carabin Roadhouse, we turn north and check out the great little town of Westonia. Westonia almost looks like a movie set out of the 1920s, but it's very much a real town, and it's been given a good makeover that has made it one of the must-see destinations along the way. The Hood Pen Museum in town is excellent, and one of the places that we recommend you go and have a look at. It's set up quite differently from most other museums you might visit, with lifelike characters and exhibits that are as close as possible to the real thing. Once you've had a good look through the museum, head up to the mine lookout and see the reason that Westonia has continued to prosper. The Edna May Mine. Yeah, it's true, you're not really out of mining territory just yet. You can grab something to eat and drink in town, and after having a good look round, it's time to head back to the highway. Continuing west, we pass the ghost town of Walgoolan. You might just notice a couple of old buildings that used to be shops on the south side of the road, but if you blink, you'll miss it. The next town of any significance is Doodlakine. There isn't a great deal here to attract the casual visitor, so we'll keep heading west to the biggest regional town in this part of the wheatbelt. Merredin has a few interesting attractions, so we would suggest you spend perhaps a night here before moving on. It's also a good spot to resupply and refuel. Probably the most interesting attraction in town is the Railway Station Museum. It's housed in the old railway station right next to a railway line that's still active. The old railway station is beautifully preserved, and there's a lot to see there, including the old signal box and even an underground cellar. When you're finished at the Railway Museum, you'll find the Merredin Military Museum just a few yards down the road. There is a collection of interesting military vehicles, including a couple of helicopters, and there are different galleries that depict the various conflicts that the military has been involved in over the years. If you're in town at the right time, you might just be lucky enough to catch a performance at the Cummins Theatre on Bates Street. There are fairly regular events here, and it's worthwhile checking out their website. The lovely old classic theatre is worth putting on your list of places to see. A link to their website is provided in the description below. If you're more inclined to look for natural places to explore, then Merredin Peak might be what you're looking for. There are some walk trails here, and a walk up to the peak gives a good view of the town. If you're in a self-contained RV, then there's an overnight parking area here as well, where you can stop and relax. If your visit coincides with spring, then you can be fairly sure of a good display of wildflowers. On your way out of town towards Perth, you'll pass an old pumping station. These were built to send water uphill from Mundaring to Kalgoorlie. Sadly, this one is sitting idle and unused. But when you reach Cunderdin, you'll see how these buildings can be repurposed. We're going to take a break from the highway here and head north to the little town of Nungarin. Nungarin is a very small town but it does have one outstanding attraction that we really do recommend you go and have a look at. The Hungarian Heritage Machinery and Army Museum is located in an original old sawtooth building that was constructed during the Second World War in 1942. It's thought that the old building is the largest timber-clad building in the Southern Hemisphere. This area was once an important military base, located deep inland, away from the coast and the threat of bombing. If you visit on a Sunday morning, but not the first Sunday of the month, as that's market day, between 8 and 10 a.m, you can enjoy a Sunday breakfast for just $15. From Nungarin, we go south again, until we reach the Great Eastern Highway, where we turn west. Not far along the highway, there's a turn off south that is signposted as Ski Lake Road. You might not expect to see water skiing out in a rather dry wheat belt like this, but there are lakes scattered around all over the place that host this popular activity when the rains are sufficiently heavy. The lake is called Bandi. It's reached by unsealed road, and it can be a very pleasant place to overnight if you're travelling in a motorhome or camper van. There are toilets and cold showers here. Back on the highway, the next town you'll encounter is Kellerberrin. Take a drive up to the top of Kellerberrin Hill to the lookout and get a great view over the surrounding farmland and over the town. There can be a really pretty display of wildflowers here during springtime. The next town west is Tiny Tamin. You'll see the huge wheat silos that dominate the town as you drive through. Next comes the larger centre of Cunderdin. Remember that old pumping station that we talked about as you left Merredin? Well, here you'll see another one, but this time it has been repurposed. It's been turned into a museum, and a great little museum it is too. If you have the time, we suggest you go in and have a look around. It's probably one of the top 5 regional museums that we can think of. Make sure you walk down the little passageway and look up inside that tall chimney. There can be quite a breeze here at times, so it's probably best not to wear a broad-brimmed hat. It might just end up shooting up that chimney. Also check out the Earthquake House. Why is there an earthquake house in the museum, you might ask? Well, the next town you pass through will provide you with the answer. The next town is called Meckering, and it's famous in Australia for the earthquake that happened there in 1968. A large portion of the town was completely destroyed by the earthquake, and the effects were even felt far away in Perth. Leaving Meckering behind, you're now heading for the large regional town of Northam. This town sits astride the Avon River, and it has a large number of heritage buildings to admire. There are nice parklands by the river and a pedestrian suspension bridge that you can walk across. Northam's claim to fame is a small colony of white swans that live there, and the fact that it's the start of the Avon Descent, a yearly white water event that's held around the end of winter. From Northam, it's not that far now to the end of your journey and the capital city of Perth. Well, that concludes the Southern Loop part of this video series. There is so much more to see and do along this route, so we highly recommend that you get a copy of Wikicamps Australia and put it on your phone. You'll find all sorts of other attractions, facilities and campsites along the way. In our next video, we begin the long drive north along the coast, all the way to the edge of WA. right up to the Kimberley town of Kununurra, just a few kilometres from the Northern Territory border. There are very long distances between stops on this route, and you need to be well prepared. Make sure your vehicle is reliable and take all the right gear with you. Take plenty of rest breaks and don't drive at dusk or dawn. That's when the local wildlife is most active and can be crossing the road. See you next time for the Northern Loop and the Kimberley.